This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trend in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini Today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Judith Mancini Today is sponsored by Basic Brands, Inc., providing the highest quality specialty products in the natural food industry. Visit basicbrandsinc.com and enter JMT15 for your 15% discount on your first order, including their very best-selling product, Vitamin E Ointment, which helps restore moisture and elasticity to your skin. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Judith Mancini Today. Hope you're all doing well. Hoping you're taking care of all your hydration and all with all the heat. I just heard that we are in a biblical drought in the West. We've been counting down the drought in the West for 3 years, but now it has become a biblical drought for 2,000 years. That's just horrible. We need to do something about our water supply and our drought and what we're doing to Mother Earth. Okay, we have a great guest today. Her name is Anita Robertson, and she's been an avid reader since her childhood in New York, and she has always cherished the delight of a well-told story. And let me tell you something. She was raised in a home with poetry reading, and poetry is one of my favorite things. So here is Anita coming to join us and talk about her book, Eiffel Spirit. Anita?
Yes, hi Judith. How
are you? I know
good.
You just returned from Pittsburgh. What I didn't tell you, well, I'm in California too, as you are, but what I didn't tell you is I enjoyed some of the happiest times of my life living in Pittsburgh for a couple of years after I married my husband, and I did a lot of business in Pittsburgh. So I hope you had a really wonderful time at your wedding, and happy to see you back with us.
Thank you. Yes, I did. And I first just want to say thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm very thrilled by that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for being my guest. I appreciate it. I have to tell everybody, I am like 40 pages short of finishing this novel. And it's unique, it's easy to read, and it puts some thoughts out there that maybe you don't know about, maybe the natural and the supernatural and things like that. And Anita's going to tell us all about it. But first, I want to hear about your poetry readings in your family on Sunday nights, and what got you. Have you always been writing books? Is this your first one? Your 20th?
Yeah, technically, I've written other books under a different pseudonym, which was under A. Louise Robertson. So I would talk about New York. It was a series that began with a book called Welcome to Mineola, which was the little town on Long Island that I grew up in. And when we were kids there, we were the baby boomer generation. So every family had a kid my age, which was so nice because I never ran out of playmates. Yes, my dad was the poet in the family. And, he was this big guy, football lover, but he wrote the most beautiful poetry. And every Sunday evening after dinner, he would read us poetry, and we all had our favorite poems. It was just so special. It was a very special time in my life. And when I think of him, I always think of that, the poetry. Yeah.
Well, we share a couple of things in common. My middle name is Louise. I was named after my grandma, Louise, and my daughter's middle name is Louise, and her son is named after me. His middle name is Louis. So we've carried on the tradition. And my mother, who was a polio victim and paralyzed, loved poetry so much, she was able to speak, and she would recite poetry on this radio show that also played classical music. So I grew up with poetry, and I'm just sorry, I suppose there is a group of people that still read poems, but it's not as popular as it once was, and it was an entertainment in the day when baby boomers were growing up, and before us, people would often gather in their sitting room or their salon and read poetry and play the piano and things like that. So I'm glad to see that you carry on. So how many books have you written?
Well, this is the Eiffel Spirit is my fourth novel, but it's the first one under Anita Robertson. So it's very special to me. The other three are kind of a series. It's Welcome to Mineola, Change to Mineola, and Farewell to Mineola. So with continuing characters that get older. Yeah.
Sure, like a Patterson mystery, a Patterson crime novel with Stone Barrington or somebody in it going on and on. I like those books that carry the character on. It makes it kind of fun. You get so you know the person. So what encouraged you to stop writing under A. Louise Robertson?
I just felt as though this is the name my mom and dad gave me, and this is the one I should use. You know, and it's funny, we're talking about Louise. I was named after an actress named Anita Louise, who was very popular back then. But when I was baptized in New York, this is kind of funny story. My dad asked the priest, "Is Anita a saint's name?" And the priest said, "Well, you've heard of Santa Anita Racetrack, haven't you? That's Saint Anita, right?" And who would know we would live a stone's throw from Arcadia, California, and the racetrack when I was an adult.
Ooh, that's a good story. I don't know if everybody knows. Santa Anita is a very famous track out here in the Los Angeles area.
Right. So, and of course, I love to go there too. So there's that.
Yes, well, I did too. So,
yeah,
that's a great story. So, what did you go to a university and take creative writing, or did you start writing when you were young and in school?
Yes, the latter of the two. I did take some creative writing classes, but I sort of have my own style. I know that sounds kind of silly, but I can write according to what the instructor says to, but I'm kind of going off on a tangent when I do that. I prefer to just get inspired and write. The Eiffel Tower had a real fascination for me. I've been to Paris. I'm so fortunate a couple of times. But the very first time I went, I was on a tour bus and we came around an intersection where you could first glimpse the Eiffel Tower, and the whole bus went, oh, you know, I mean, it was like so exciting to see that, you know, and I think that's what inspired me to write that book, because it seems to be fascinating to just about everybody.
Well, it is fascinating.
Right, it is. And it's such a landmark. I mean, I don't know anybody that wouldn't recognize that, you know, so I knew that mysterious things could be happening around that tower. And I decided to create those. Yeah. So.
Well, the only disappointment with the Eiffel Tower these days is there are huge crowds around it.
Absolutely. And most, Yes, and a lot of pickpockets.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, I was not pickpocketed there, but someplace in Paris, I was pickpocketed the last
Oh,
time we were there.
they're
But
pretty
that was
slick.
okay because then I got to go back to Chanel and buy a new wallet. So,
Oh, how nice. Lovely. That's
and
a
my
lovely,
insurance paid for it. So
wonderful.
I
And
think that's true. We don't want to cast aspersions on Paris, but I
oh, of
think
course
that's
not.
true of all big cities, like New York, people want to go to, and Boston, or Washington, D.C., are really familiar and historic places in the United States, just like they do in Paris or Germany or London, England, and all.
Right,
And
right,
unfortunately, there is crime and there are pickpockets.
right. You have to keep your eyes open, is
Yes, you
what
do.
you have to do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes. Well, I
So,
love to travel. Traveling to me is the best gift in the world. I just soak up stuff from everywhere I go. And I love to meet people from different countries and
different
try
walks of life.
everything.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. So, where was the inspiration for Eiffel Tower?
Well,
Was it
I
your first trip to Paris, or did
yes,
you think about this the second time?
it was the first time because I was enthralled with the place. Everybody wants their picture taken with it. It's just natural the first time you see it, and the colors when it changes colors at night. It's just breathtaking. Yeah. So I was very inspired, and then the park. There's that lovely park around the tower,
Yes.
and I thought to myself, before this day and age, there wasn't as much, you know, um, commercial activity as there is today. So it was a small town back when the story I told was happening. It wasn't gigantic. People did not come from all over the world to see the Eiffel Tower. So my characters are kind of local Parisians, and the girl that is my heroine, she starts out as an innocent, uh, young lady who just needs to be able to support herself. So becoming an au pair, she's able to, take care of herself and still, feel useful. And she is given the care of a little girl that she bonds with immediately. So this was the little core of the story.
Well, let's explain what an au pair is to people
Oh,
who don't
sure.
know.
Sure, that's a permanent babysitter, a live-in babysitter that gets to know the family and the child on a daily basis, and really becomes part of the family quite often. So for my character, it was a perfect place for her to be.
So this novel takes place at the beginning, the close to the turn of the century, 19th century. And you speak of carriages and all. An au pair would spend all the time with the child. The mother would come up and see the child once in a while and say hello and play with them a little bit, but they had separate lives, and they even had separate lives here in the United States. They would have au pairs and all, and teachers that would come in, and the child very seldom even had dinner with her parents. So not until they were a little older were they allowed to come down and have the family dinner, and when the guests were there to say hello and all. So it was a different way of living. And I think for a young girl who had to go find her way in the world, because she had in this book a little tragic family, and she was able to get this wonderful position as an au pair in this house. So she was then introduced to the finer things of life also.
Right, right. Because only the wealthy families could live in this particular lifestyle. And as I talk about in the book, her mother's always off at some social event. They're very social people. And so she has her little clique of rich people that live in Paris. And I think to myself, oh, how nice that must have been to have that kind of lifestyle, and yet the little girl, she did not feel neglected because she had somebody that took such good care of her on a daily basis.
And that often happens with an au pair. They become more like the mother or the parent, or they become like a sister. And it's a fascinating lifestyle, one that we should look at. I mean, there are people who still live like this, and oftentimes the au pair becomes like a member of the family. Absolutely. And travels with them and does everything with them. So
right.
I think it's nice, particularly in today's world. We have extended families all over. You could live in Los Angeles and have families living in Pittsburgh, for instance.
Yeah, that's exactly
so
right.
It adds some order to the house if you're able to do things like that. But there's nothing like a parent being around for a child. So tell us more, but don't give it away. I still have 40 pages to go.
Okay. Well, I won't tell you the ending.
No, please
don't. But this young lady, as she becomes, she's no longer a child when she's living with this family, she finds out some secrets about the family that she keeps to herself because she wants to protect their good name. That's how personalized she has become with the family. She doesn't want anything, especially the mother. She doesn't want anything to detract from her reputation in society, which it would if this young woman told everything she knew. So she doesn't divulge things. And that's a side of her that I really like. I mean, myself, that she is very discreet, and there's I'm not going to just tell you the whole story, but she discovers something about the father in the house that she keeps to herself. And when you read that part, which you already have, Judith, that really happened. That really was, I'm just going to say, a photograph found that that really happened in my life. So
that really happened in your life?
Yes.
So is this a story of your life?
No, but you weave in your own experiences.
Okay.
That's right. And so I thought that was kind of a pivotal. It tells a lot about the father. I mean, his what he's really doing every day. Instead of
it tells a lot about a lot of big, powerful businessmen, I think.
That's right. And so I'm just going to put that little teaser out there for the reader, and they will know right away when they come across that part.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So I loved being able to describe different characters. Some of them are real baddies, but in your own life, you have people like that take advantage of you or try to, and this girl grows up learning these things. I mean, it forces her to grow up, and so that's going on.
I think it forces her also. What I took away is it forces her to realize what kind of a life she wants to live. One of being very moral and confidential, or being a gadabout and being a gossip.
Exactly.
Taking advantage of her position in the home.
Right. And you face those kind of decisions in your life, moral decisions in your life. And I wanted her true colors to come out, and I believe they do, because she does have somebody who cares for her, who is a decent person. So that comes about, eventually.
I think it's a wonderful character development. I enjoyed that. I think the book is very well written, and it's easy to read, and it's easy to follow. Before we get too much further, I have a question, though.
Okay.
You start out naming your chapters in English, and about the 6th chapter, you start using French.
I guess I was
forth.
I was submerged by that point, I suppose. But I kind of thought it was fun to introduce, that little bit of French, which wasn't much. I think most people could figure out those were numbers.
Oh,
so yeah, exactly.
But I wonder how many people even notice it. So
I thought
that was a little mystery that you put in there.
I think that you're probably right about that, because people don't notice a lot of things, and you know what? I just love telling stories. I think it started out with, when my kids were little or my grandkids were little, they get so enraptured with your storytelling prowess. They love it. And you know what? I've always loved to read. I think, my first set of books that I fell in love with was Little Women.
Louisa.
I love those books when I was a kid.
Yes.
So, I just want to be able to tell a story that is.
Well, here's something we have to tell the young people if they listen in, or some of the younger mothers. Louisa May Alcott wrote the Little Women books.
Yes, and those were based on her life and her family. Yeah, exactly. That you just, they're characters that you just fall in love with.
I liked Under the Lilacs.
That's good too.
One of her books. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, you've read more than the usual.
I'm a reader. I am a reader. So.
Right. I had a time in my life when people were giving me Louisa May Alcott books as gifts, because they knew that. Yeah, they knew that was my favorite author, and I was. Yeah.
It's unfortunate that I'm called Grandma Mama. It's unfortunate that people kind of frown on children receiving books as gifts. And I was known for my first set of grandchildren. One's going to be 17 now, and one will be 15 in November. Wow. I always gave them books, and I gave them other things too, but I always made a point of giving them a book, because that is one of my fondest memories growing up. And I was raised by my grandma Louise. I always received a book for birthday, Christmas, and kids just don't read the way they did. And there's something about holding a book and smelling the print and the paper that you can't get on your iPod.
You're right. And
that's not the same.
They're so used to electronics, the young people now. And I think they're missing something. They really are. Because I'm with you. I like to hold that book and turn the pages. All that's part of the romance of reading. Yes. Exactly. So, yeah. Now, do you write, Judith? I have to ask.
I used to write a little. I've never been published because I've never tried to be published, but I'm contemplating, I'm more than contemplating doing a memoir. I've had rather an interesting life, so I'm going to work on that, and my brother's going to work on it also. Good. We may do a book together. So
that's great. My third child, my one son, Ryan, he encouraged me his whole life to write. And I'm not so sure that I would have been published without that incentive that he always gave me. Sure. But he's like, good. And when you have someone in your life that pushes you, you're more apt to do something,
Yes.
So, yeah. But and like you say, you read a lot.
I read a lot. I read it to escape my business and my problems. I'm happily married, fortunately, but I read on my iPad when I'm in bed at night, so I don't bother my husband. But otherwise, I like to read paper books, bound books. But I think it's, we're both baby boomers, if you will. And I think it's something that people are losing it. And one thing they're also losing is the history that we have and what we did in our lives and how things have changed.
That's right.
Because we have grandchildren now, and I know they don't even understand that some of our ancestors came across the country in covered wagons from the east to the west. And yet we have seen men walk on the moon, and my husband and I were fortunate to have one of those astronauts at one of our dinner parties.
Oh, how nice.
So these are things that my grandchildren have no idea what happened in my life.
Right.
And I'd like them to remember.
We lived whole different lives. I was just telling my daughter the other day, we didn't come in the house. We didn't want to be in the house. We were always playing outside. And when we got called in, it was like, oh, darn it. We have to go inside,
Right.
I know. I wish there was more of that going on. The hopscotch and the roller skates and
Yes.
So I think we were very fortunate to grow up like that.
Absolutely.
Right. But these days, they've got some kind of electronic device with them at all times. Yeah. My oldest grandson's going to be 20. I don't know how that happened.
It was magic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because it wasn't supposed to happen that fast. You're right. I know. It's crazy. I know. And yet, some of the things that are going on today, we never would have believed them back when we were kids.
Well, some of the things that are happening today, I would wish that they're not happening today.
Exactly. You have to concentrate on the positive, I guess. I was looking at the pictures from the James Webb telescope. Oh, that kind of thing fascinates the heck out of me. It's wonderful to live in the days of scientific discovery in that area.
Absolutely. And advances in medicine and all, but then we get a little frightened when the CDC comes out and says they were totally wrong about COVID.
I know. It's like, what? I'm with you.
People. Well, let's get back to your wonderful book. So, she has found her moral ground.
Yes, exactly.
And you've developed her character very nicely. You kind of fall in love with her as you read it and think, oh, what a nice young lady.
Exactly.
But there's some rather scary parts in the book that's supernatural. Maybe they're not supernatural. Maybe they're natural. You really don't know. You've woven a really great little mystery that you've put in here. The spirit, Eiffel Spirit.
Yes.
Do you want to say anything about that, or do you want to tell how you developed that idea? Is that a real legend in Paris? I had never heard it before. So.
No, it's not. And the evil part of the spirit versus the person you find out who is trying to prevent the spirit from injuring or hurting other people just because something happened in his life that sort of made him psychotic in a way. Excuse me. So there's a battle going on there, and it definitely is a mystery to find out. What the good, like you mentioned in the coming attractions, the good versus the evil, and
yes,
and that's a struggle for my heroine too. So she's trying to protect the good side, and it's not easy, for her. But again, she stays to her moral fabric, and she's going to stick with that.
Well, I found it interesting because through your protagonist's life, she hits on just about every single thing that the modern day woman today complains about or decides to let the world know has happened to them. And so that way your book, even though it's set in the turn of the century, it is contemporary enough with today's problems.
Yeah, the challenges are virtually the same because, we do fight battles of morals and good and evil in our lives every day. And, Yeah, and so good people really stand out, from the crowd, I think, and it's not easy to be a stalwart individual, but if you've got it inside of you, that's who you are, and that's who you always will be. So yeah, she uncovers things that happened in her mother's life and in her father's life, even before she was aware of things, and they change her perspective too, which is good.
Well, it does change your perspective when you find
Right.
out. If you've not been raised by your mother and father, you tend to believe everything everybody tells you about them. And
That's right.
And my brother is wonderful at digging deep and trying to find out about our family.
Nice.
And he's found out some things about our father that were very heroic and made him maybe suffer from post-traumatic syndrome. So you never know, particularly these people who grow up in different families, and your protagonist is somebody who has to go out on her own at a very early age.
Right. And I'm thinking, how brave was that? That was brave of her to do that. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. And yet women, and again, female empowerment is important to me. I'm proud of her because she could have just gone with, a job at the bakery which her friend owned. She wanted more than that, for her life. And she did. She carved out a real meaning for her existence, is what she did. And her influence on that child is so beautiful. I mean, it becomes, her whole life is wrapped up around teaching and inspiring the child.
So what we've done is we've made her real today. You made her real in your novel, but I feel like we're talking about a person we don't know.
Yes, I agree with you there.
And
yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons your book was endearing to me. It's so believable. And
nice.
It's almost like a biography of somebody
Mm-hmm.
being the novel.
Right.
So I can't wait to sit down today, if I ever find any free time, to finish my 40 pages. I was just trying to finish it before the show, but I kept getting interrupted by emails and things.
I know what you mean.
I'm looking forward to that. What is on your horizon?
Well, I writing another sort of spiritual, I don't know, I got off on this tangent, but a story called The Borealis Effect, which takes place at the Aurora Borealis. And people, let's just put it this way, people go there to see it and then they disappear.
Well, have you seen it?
Not yet. It's definitely on my list. Okay. I am dying to see it.
Yes, I would love to see it too.
Oh, yeah. Really? It just that again, it fascinates the heck out of me. Things, just get in my imagination and I can't let them go, That's just so spectacular to look at. And the fact that it really happens, somebody didn't make that up. So yeah, so the characters are disappearing, but where are they going? Well, I'm not going to tell you yet. And then I started kind of off to the side of that, of writing about my cancer struggles and things, how I've overcome them and how fortunate I am to live in a day and age when science, it's amazing to me, Judith. I have to say, I was diagnosed in April with colon cancer, had the surgery and completely cured. Now, excuse me, how'd that happen?
I'm so happy for you. You're truly blessed. Yes.
So I started writing. Oh, I also have multiple myeloma, which is a blood disorder.
Yes.
But I've had the what do you call it? The stem cell transplant. These things weren't
good
even
for
there.
you. Good for you.
Yeah. And so I'm just in my head right now calling that book The Big C. And
That's great.
and just telling people what it was like to just go through these the healing process on these things. Because what I guess the bottom line on that is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's methods out there to fix you. So even though it could be overwhelming,
it's interesting. My experience in my past profession was as owner and publisher of a health and nutrition publishing company.
Wow.
And magazines, not books. But so I'm very interested in all of these things. So I hope you finish that book and you come back and talk to us about that book also.
Definitely. I would love to.
And you're brave going through the big C, and you're a wonderful person to share all of that with everyone. So we'll be looking forward to that. But I'm also looking forward to Aurora Borealis.
Right, the magical, mystical book.
Yes.
Yeah, it is fun to write about things that are potential mysteries that have spirits doing things in them, because they can do anything you want them to do. They're not real. So, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people would like to write a book, or they think they have one in them. And all I can say to that is just sit down and start writing.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter how it comes out. Just keep writing and then get yourself a good publisher.
Absolutely.
Who likes your idea, and they'll help you put it together. Is that how you did it?
Yeah. And you know what? Well, I was very fortunate in that area to find a publisher. Yes, and but again, I would write anyway, even if it didn't get published, because I have stories I want to tell.
Sure.
But I totally agree with you. If a person wants to write, I hope they do. I really do, because it feels good.
Well, look how many people are journaling these days. It's
right.
Like when we grew up, everybody had My Diary, and it had a little key on the front of it.
Yes, I had one.
Their secrets. But people are journaling all the time now. So there's a lot of people out there that have things that need to come out and shared with other people. So
it's such good therapy.
It is good therapy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
I wish I
had right though. A lot of people do.
Pardon?
I know. I wish I had mine too from when I was a kid.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
But they were interesting.
So how far along are you on your new Aurora Borealis?
That one's about, I'd say 3/4. Because what happens is when they get that far, I kind of go back to the beginning, and I usually don't like the beginning at all, so I revamp it.
Well, because you think you're going into a different direction.
Right. Sure. Right. Or I told too much. Maybe I told too much at the beginning, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
So yeah. So I don't think writing is difficult, but I do think editing your own work, that's the part you'd like to just give to somebody else, because
and it is sometimes a good idea to give it to somebody else.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Have other people read your stuff, and don't get your feelings hurt if they
no, I mean, you need a good editor, because they can encourage you and show you where maybe you've been repetitive or you haven't explained enough, and maybe you leapt forward too fast without explaining why you're going in this direction. Sure. So you need an editor. Self-publishing is good, but self-publishing doesn't mean you need to go through everything by yourself. And there's a lot of wonderful publishers there that are accessible to everybody.
Right. Now, I do have some family members that have read, are good at reading a chapter or two also, which is great for just getting, does this make sense question out there. And that's something you just don't know when you're the one who's written it. You don't know if does this make sense to an outside person.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So exactly. So how exciting. How far along is the big C?
That I'm just scratching the surface on that. But you know what's funny is coming back to me very vividly the like encounter in the doctor's office the very first time that he told me that. I guess yeah, you did every detail of that office, doctor's office comes to mind. You know, and I'm I'm getting older. My memory isn't that great, but there's things that are carved out there like that. I guess you just never forgot. So, yeah.
No, there are lots of things you remember when you've gone through trauma that you don't normally think about, and it
right.
stirs it up and it comes out to you. I wish you would concentrate on writing this big C book also. Okay. Find time to do that, because I think that will be so valuable to many, many people, especially since you did stem cell therapy. That is very big, and I know a lot of people are having problem getting insurance to pay for it, and it's most valuable. And we need to go to these alternative methods, and I don't even consider that an alternative methods, but it's fairly new in the last 20 years. So I really encourage you to get that book written, because I know it will help hundreds. And in the meantime, everybody can sit there during their therapy and read your fabulous novels.
Thank you.
Trying to relax and meditate and take their therapy the way they need to do it. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. It was truly a delight to have you, and I love delving into how people write their books, how they come up with the ideas, and the publishing and editing and following your protagonist through her life. I just think it's wonderful.
Well, I have really enjoyed this. In fact, it's gone way too fast. You said 45 minutes, and I'm like, oh, that's a long time. But
I know. When you have lots of valuable information and your book is fascinating, it's easy to do. Time just flies. Thank you so much, Anita. I will be staying in touch with you, because I would like you to come back on for those 2 books that you're writing. So I'm going to be pushing you.
Okay, I would love that.
Okay.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Anita.
Bye.
That was fascinating to me. And truly, her books are such valuable things. And I really wish you would do this. I wish you'd give your grandchildren a hardcover book, or even a softcover book. Some of them aren't published in hardcovers anymore. And take a list at the banned books that people are putting up in our school system, because it's not right to be banning things like To Kill a Mockingbird. We need to know the history that goes on in the country. And this is a novel that is very valuable to racism and how people have been treated, and how we don't want to treat people that are different from us like that anymore. So that's my request for you today. Stay up on the news. Things are popping every single day. And let me remind you that in a couple of months, I'm going to have a surprise for you called Golden Years, Golden Fears. So you don't want to miss that, particularly if you are a woman of a certain age. Yes, that's it for today. And I'm going to leave you with these words: cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today.